Hey everybody, we're going to get started as we wait for more people to roll in. Welcome to our June office hours. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We're going to be diving into Canny Ideas today, but while we wait for a couple more participants or attendees to join, I'll just talk to you about how the session is going to run. So we have a 35-minute review of ideas with Julia, and then afterwards we're going to have Q&A. We intentionally kept the group for this session quite small, as we know that ideas is for some of you a new concept, and there could be some bigger conversations that we have. So we wanted to allow the time and space for you to ask questions. There's two ways you can ask questions. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. So you can ask questions in there throughout the session, and I will do my best to answer them. Or if we think it's quite a good question that other people will benefit from, I might let you know that we're going to save it for later, and Julia will answer the question at the end of the session. So this is being recorded. So you will get a recording of the call and the slide deck after, I think tomorrow is when we usually send it out. So you'll get that if you have to leave early. But yeah, that's what you can expect today. Julia, do you want to go to the next slide? So I've kind of maybe already introduced as well. Anyway, I'm Claire. I'm our head of operations. I'm literally just here to support Julia and answer your questions. And then we have Julia, who is our customer success manager. Some of you may know her as she is your CSM, and some of you may not know her. For those who don't know her, Julia supports our bigger clients to really get the most out of their Canny subscription and understand how to fully use the tool across multiple verticals within their business. And that's the end of my talking, I think. I'm going to hand it over to you, Julia.
Thank you so much, Claire. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to walk you through ideas today. For our agenda, we're going to walk through what is this new feature that we're introducing and how does it help you organize your internal feedback and organize, how you prioritize your feedback as well. There's a lot to cover, and there's a lot of little changes as well. So like Claire mentioned, please be sure to leverage the Q&A functionality within this chat here. Within this Zoom call, whatever you call this. And we'll do our best to answer. And anything we think is, like Claire said, juicy, we'll save to the end and I'll answer for you. But let's talk about what this new feature is. What is Ideas? So we are introducing a new initiative called Ideas, and it's meant to help you manage feedback internally. It's built on a hierarchy structure that uses parent-child relationships to help you organize related ideas. You can think of it as an internal workspace where your product team can group, prioritize, and act on feedback without compromising or changing what your customers see. Today, it can be a little bit tricky to plan for larger initiatives within Canny and break them into smaller, trackable pieces. For example, a customer might submit a piece of feedback like reporting or improve your reporting. And to a customer, that may appear to just be a single request. It's super valid feedback. But as we know, reporting is often a very broad subject and may even be, an area of your product. And it's made up of many different smaller tasks and feature requests. And so right now there isn't, a structured way in Canny to show how those smaller ideas connect to the larger theme. And at the moment, of course, you can use boards and categories, and these are all really helpful tools, but they are also customer facing. And so there's kind of limits to how closely they reflect your internal structure. So this is one of the challenges that we're working to solve for with this new feature, which is giving you more flexibility to manage feedback in a way that matches how your team actually works without overcomplicating, the customer side of things. Also, when planning and prioritizing in Canny today, a lot of the work happens in one place. And that means all of your internal work and what you share with your customers is all done in one post. And sometimes it can get a little bit confusing, especially if you have a lot of information. You may want to show a different status to your customers than you have internally. And switching between the internal and external comments can sometimes lead to mistakes. So that's why we've also built Ideas, which is to help you and give you this dedicated space to do your internal work. And it gives you kind of a separate space to share updates with your customers. And you are able to add more context, manage statuses, and work privately, and then share what you want to share with your end users whenever you're ready. So there's no mixing up your work, no accidentally sending something to the wrong audience. We just make it very simple for you. Um, so let's dive into the hierarchy portion of ideas. So we are introducing a few new building blocks to make this possible. We're introducing a new concept called groups, and groups are meant to represent higher areas of your product, larger initiatives or projects or themes within your organization that relate obviously to feedback. You can think of them as folders essentially. In a group, you can have a subgroup. Subgroups help to organize subfeatures, themes, or focus areas within a group. Um, Another concept we're introducing is called ideas. Ideas represent the action item, the to-do list, or the feature request. Ideas are internal facing, but they also can have an external public view as well. An idea can have a sub-idea, which is a smaller piece of work that supports or builds on the larger idea. And finally, a new concept we're introducing is something called insights. Insights are basically evidence as to why something should be prioritized. They're an individual piece of feedback from your sales team, from your Zendesk, from Autopilot that help inform or support an idea. This is a lot of new information, but don't worry, we're going to go through it all and break it down. So let's jump into groups and subgroups first. So groups, as I mentioned, are folders that represent a higher level initiative or product area. Um, Earlier, we talked about how a customer might submit a piece of feedback called reporting and how that can get a little bit convoluted as a single post. So instead of having one post called reporting, you could actually leverage groups for this, since reporting is actually a whole area of your product. Then within that group, you are able to create subgroups, which again, subgroups are optional subdivisions to further organize your related work. So under reporting, for example, the group reporting, you might have subgroups like customer reporting, time reporting, etc. For each group and subgroup, you add or will need to include a description. And this is going to help with auto sorting, which we're going to go over in just a moment. An idea is the core unit of work that your team manages in Canny. It represents a feature improvement, a task, and it has a clear deliverable and it ties directly to your feedback. So using our reporting example from earlier, we might have a feature request called monthly active user trends. So how active are our users monthly? So this would live under a subgroup like customer reporting, for example, which would then live under the broader, larger area of our product, which is reporting. Under ideas, we have sub-ideas, and sub-ideas break a larger concept into smaller, more actionable pieces of work. So they help your team plan and track progress at a more detailed level. Each sub-idea can have its own owner, own timeline, own technical scope, while still rolling up to the main idea. So for example, the sub-ideas of this idea I have here, feature request, which is monthly active user trends, could be, we want to be able to measure active user spikes, user drop-off trends. These are all just sub-ideas that build out the full picture, which is monthly active user trends. On an idea, you can have an insight. Insights are evidence as to why this feature should be prioritized. So this is where your internal team would go to log feedback that they've captured from their customers. Again, this is all internal facing, and it's meant to give you the text behind your user points and business impact. At the start, I mentioned how ideas gives your team this private space to do their work, and then you get to choose what's shared externally with your customers. So let's go through that. So before ideas, everything was built around posts. A post is a single record that your team would work from, and all of that work, regardless if it's internal or external, would happen in this one post. And this could create two main problems. Number one, confusing that comment toggle and posting something externally by mistake. And secondly, it was hard to manage which posts should be public facing and what should stay private, and it can get a little bit confusing. So, how we're solving that today is through an idea. An idea, again, is just one entity with two possible views. By default, you'll always have the internal view. And again, this is where your team works from. So you can add an insight, you can update your fields here, manage your priorities, and all of that stays private for your team. But then you can also have this portal view, and the portal view is what your customers see in the customer feedback portal. So anything you modify here could be shown publicly. Again, just to reiterate, it's just one idea. You're just switching between what's visible internally versus what's visible externally with your customers. And you may be wondering, how does feedback and the workflow of feedback change with ideas? So let's talk about the three main ways that you collect feedback in Canny and how Ideas helps to improve that workflow. So as we know, there are three main ways that you can collect feedback within Canny. The first is automatically through Autopilot, which is Canny's AI-powered feedback tool. For those who don't know, I highly recommend you check it out, but very high level, Autopilot automatically monitors your connected integrations like intercoms, Zendesk, Gong. It scans the closed conversations to extract and capture anything that might look like feedback without any manual effort. Again, highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. The second is through our integrations, which allow your internal teams to capture and log feedback directly on behalf of your customers. And the third is through the portal, as we know. So this is the public facing space where your customers can submit feedback directly. So if you're using Autopilot, then the process remains the same. It will scan your closed conversations and the various different tools that we offer, look for feedback, and pull that into Canny automatically for you. But instead, by default, it will create an idea with an internal view only. However, you can choose if you also want it to show publicly in the public portal as well. And if you join our webinar tomorrow, same time, we'll talk more in depth about this process. But just high level, not much is changing with Autopilot, just that it will create an internal idea, but you can choose if you also want to make it external facing. And this is to give you more control over what's published. We also sync with various different integrations. Our most popular is Slack. If you haven't checked out the Slack integration, it will change your life. It's great. I recommend you check it out. So for example, by connecting Slack, your team can manually push customer feedback directly into Canny, where then it comes into Canny as an idea with strictly an internal view by default. From there, your team gets to decide whether you want to make it public facing as well. And so again, this gives you the opportunity to vet feedback before it goes public, and you can kind of choose what's shared publicly with your end users. Your customer's experience will remain the exact same. Customers still have access to the external facing portal. They can choose the board and category, add their feedback, and then that gets added into Canny. The only difference is that the feedback now comes in as an idea instead of a post. And again, each idea has two views. The internal view where your team does all of your internal work, it's done privately. And then we have the portal view, which is what your customers see. And from there, you're able to reply to customers' comments, give them updates on where that feature is in its product's lifecycle. So just a quick recap, any feedback that's brought in from Autopilot automatically creates an internal idea, but you get to choose if you also want to make it public facing. Feedback is brought in when feedback is brought in from an integration, you can also choose if you want to make this public facing, but by default, it will always create an internal view for you. However, any feedback that your customers submit through the portal will, of course, automatically create both an internal idea, but it will also create the portal view so other customers can add their feedback to it. As part of this change, we are introducing a new feature called auto grouping. This will help with organizing your feedback automatically. Before ideas, the way that you organized your feedback was using filters, which you found on the left-hand side of the portal view. You were able to filter by board and status, etc. You can assign an owner, add a tag, and this is to help us track who is responsible for the feedback and understand where it belongs. And that can be obviously quite a manual process. You could also push it to a roadmap like we're seeing here, but the problem is that you get a very long list of roadmap views like we're seeing on the screen here. And sometimes feedback could be added to the wrong roadmap or just missed overall. And so to help with this initial triaging process, we've introduced auto grouping. And so auto grouping reads the feedback coming into Canny regardless of the source. So if it's being pushed in manually by your customers or your team, or if it's brought in from autopilot, we are automatically reading the conversation or reading the text and then automatically placing it into the right group for you based on the descriptions that you've written for each group. So instead of someone on your team having to manually sort through your ideas and make sure it has the right tag, right owner, our AI, our autopilot, does everything for you. And the better the group descriptions that you have, obviously, the more accurate our AI is. So let's just say, for example, we're using autopilot, we're syncing with intercom. A customer writes into intercom saying, we want better bike battery. That's their feedback. We capture that automatically through autopilot, of course, and then that gets filtered into the right, that gets filtered into Canny as a piece of feedback, as an idea. And then behind the scenes, it's automatically grouped based on the group hierarchy and the descriptions that you've set up for each group. So Canny will automatically create an idea and group it under the relevant product area, which in this case would be e-bikes. Again, our AI is looking at text. So we're looking at things like the title, the description, and if you have this open for your end users and you are using boards, then we'll also consider the board as well. And then we match it to the right group through the keywords that you've put in place and the descriptions that you've added. This is what it looks like when a customer submits feedback through the public portal. So because the feedback is including words like maps and routes, which match the description of our navigation group, which you can see here, our AI automatically creates an idea and then auto groups it into the navigation group. And so here we can see it was filed correctly. And when we click into it, you'll notice again, it has these two views, the internal view, which is where your team does your work, and the external view, or the portal view. And this is where you can see what your customers are posting, what they're saying, etc. There are a few ways that you can set up your groups and subgroups, and it's important to talk through the best way to do that. So let's jump into it. Before ideas, the main way to group related feedback internally was through boards, but boards are also used externally with your customers so they can submit their feedback. And sometimes this can create a conflict because you needed a board name that made sense to your customers, of course, but then you also needed it to make sense for your team internally. And again, sometimes these things don't always align. And so this is why groups are so helpful, because groups are completely separate to boards. Groups are completely internal and are used as a system for organizing your feedback. And it's important to think through how you want to set up these groups. Our recommendation is setting them up either by the features of your product or high level projects that you're working on, anything that's evergreen. And then, as mentioned, organizing subgroups is also really important, and subgroups live under your groups. They help you further organize your work. Our recommendation for setting up subgroups is either by sub-features of that area of product or by common themes found within that area or group. So, for example, I have a group called Transportation. This is a eco-friendly transportation app called EcoZoo. And so you can see my groups are organized accordingly based on the different areas of my product. So I have a group called Transportation. And then under Transportation, you can see I have a couple of subgroups. I have e-bike, e-scooter, car share, booking page. These are all features within that area of my product. You may be wondering, do I need to change my board setup? And the answer is no if it's working for you and your team and your customers. Our recommendation is to organize your boards either by the product features or by the type of feedback you expect to receive. So type of feedback would be feature enhancements, bug requests, etc. The goal is to keep it simple for your customers. Let's talk about how we can organize our feedback within ideas. So first, let's review fields. This photo should look familiar. This is a post from the feedback view. And as you all know, the details that relate to this post are on the right-hand side of this feature request here, including default details, custom details, tags, owners, etc. Now here we are in the ideas view again, and all of these fields we had will remain the exact same. So we still have the status, owner, any custom fields we've created. And instead of creating tags, you would just create a custom field for it. To create a new field, you would click on Field. And here you can choose how you want the field to show up. So do we want it to be a rating, a checkbox, text, etc.? So if I wanted to set up a tagging system, for example, I would create a new field and I would choose drop down as an option, for example. So here I'm creating a tagging system for which quarter um, uh, each feature should live in. Fields are helpful because I'm able to prioritize my work easily. I can toggle on specific data points such as, owner, due dates, and urgency, and I can also create as many fields as I need. So for example, I can create a field called impact to measure my estimation of how this feature might impact my customers. So here we're creating a new impact score. We're going to put it as a rating. And now here I'm able to go through and actually rate each feature request. And now this helps me better prioritize and understand my feedback. Views are a really helpful tool as well. They help you look at your feedback holistically and start making decisions on how to prioritize it. So let's jump into it a little bit more. So before ideas, to prioritize your work effectively, we would recommend leveraging the internal roadmap. So here you're able to add your feedback to a specific roadmap, add in some fields to help you better prioritize it. And there were just a few challenges with this view. Still an incredibly helpful tool, but if you're using it every day, you might have run into some things like, you can only use one score per roadmap, and sometimes you are often left with a long list of roadmap views. You also have to make sure you're pushing the feedback from the feedback view into the roadmap view. So there's that manual step. And that's why Canny's introducing views to help your team manage feedback more effectively. Each group has its own set of views. So instead of you jumping between multiple different roadmaps to find what's relevant to you, everything you need is already in one place. We've created a couple default views for you. So there's the triage view, which is any new feedback that you haven't reviewed yet with an open status. We have the backlog view, which is ideas you've reviewed but not yet prioritized. And we have the roadmap view, which is ideas that are actively being prioritized or worked on. These views here that we've built by default are built based on statuses. And that's how views are built. They're built on either the different filters you can apply. You're also able to toggle on fields as well. So you're able to customize and create as many views as you need to. And similar to the old Canny view that we had, you're able to add in fields to help you prioritize and understand your feedback a little bit better. So if it helps you, views are kind of similar to the roadmap view previously. It's just a way to look at your feedback holistically. So let's say I wanted to create a view that only shows the ideas that I'm working on. I'm going to create a new view called Julia's view. I'm filtering it by owner, and anything assigned to me will show up here. You can also filter by other things too, like due date, the different groups, custom fields you've created. You'll also notice that this view is inside the reporting group. So that means every view in this group is specific to the reporting product. So you always know exactly where you are and what you're looking at. We've also improved our scoring functionality in Canny, so now you're able to create multiple scores based on multiple different fields. So here you see I've already created a rice score, but let's say I wanted to add a value versus effort score. I would simply go to fields, create a new score, and here I'm able to create that new score and have multiple scores going at the same time. So there's been a lot of change that we've discussed today. So let's just recap some of the main points of what's changing here at Canny. So as mentioned, before ideas, all work happened on the post level. Internal and external work was done in the same place. And this can create a few problems. It was hard to break down feedback further within a post, and valid feedback would often get buried in the comments. And there was sometimes a little bit of a risk of submitting an internal comment externally. And so that's why ideas is so helpful. Um, it splits each piece of feedback into two views, so your team can do their internal work privately, but then you have, a separate area to communicate and check in with your customers. So there's these separate spaces without any crossover. Boards still exist, but their role has changed. Boards are kind of now more for your customers and is a way for your customers to submit feedback. Posts still live in a board, but they're just the customer facing side. Internally, the way that you organize your feedback is through groups. Groups are internal folders that help your team organize feedback more effectively. And finally, you might be wondering, what's an insight versus a vote? Insights are strictly internal facing. They only live in the internal view of an idea. This is where your internal team members, like your sales team, support team, any GTM member, is able to go and add further context as to why a customer might need this feature. It's basically evidence as to why this feature should be prioritized. On the portal view, you'll see votes. These are the votes that are being added externally by your end users. Their votes are still counted overall in the vote count. So tomorrow, we have a webinar where we jump more into the weeds with ideas. We talk about best practices. We talk about, how you're able to ensure feedback coming in is also public as well. So if you'd like to join, please do. It's the same time today, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. So please be sure to join. But thank you so much for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Hopefully this was helpful in understanding ideas a little bit more. And we can open it up to some questions now.
Wonderful. So we had one question that came through in Spanish. And Julia, I know you've been working on your Spanish, but I won't ask you to read it out loud. The translation I got was, how can I link multiple customer comments within the same idea? I answered saying insights, but it might be this last slide. Was there more that you wanted to add on multiple customer comments and how insights work in that way?
Yes, I would recommend exactly, Claire, using insights. So if it's like if you're saying like a post might, there's several posts that might relate to one post and you need to connect that, then I would just maybe exactly take those posts that have been created and add an insight to the main post that you want to focus on. Um, that's kind of our best practice right now. So yeah.
Wonderful. And deduplication applies to this too, right? Like if two customers had a similar comment or feedback, we would merge those into the same idea. Is that right?
That's right, Claire. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So Autopilot has two main functionalities. The first is what I was chatting about earlier, which is it syncs with various different tools and automatically captures feedback for you. The second portion of Autopilot is exactly what Claire said, which is deduplication. So exactly what you said, Claire. Any new feedback that comes into Canny, we're reading to see if it already exists within Canny, and then we're merging that for you. Again, check out Autopilot. It's great.
And last point on that, if there's different MRR values with those different customers, it will also merge the values so that the idea has the true MRR or ARR value shown, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Cool. I'm a product pro. Look at that. Couple more questions. Somebody asked if there's any additional charge for this. So for ideas.
No, there's no additional charge for ideas right now.
Great. And then, oh, there's another question that came in. I'm going to translate this while I ask the next question. How do I update customers on features they requested or voted for?
How do you update customers on features? So I would recommend leveraging the status change that we have. So there's a couple of things. So number one is on the public uh, view of an idea. Let me just see if I can get there. Um, you can either update the status on the public view of the idea, and that will automatically notify, or you can choose if you want to notify everyone who has voted on that particular post. So that's number one. Number two is you can also send comments within on the public view of an idea as well, and just say like, hey, provide more context as to where this feature is. And then finally, I recommend checking out our changelog feature, which is really great. It's an announcement tool essentially. It's almost like a blog of everything that you've released, and it's a great way to let your customers know what's being worked on and when. Actually, one more is our public facing roadmap, which is just kind of 3 columns. You get to choose, it's based on statuses. You get to choose those statuses. So often people are saying, would put, in progress, looking into complete. Um, and yeah, it basically just sorts the feedback within that status, and it's just a really easy way to see what's being worked on and when. Hopefully that helps to answer that question.
One extra thing I'll add is on the idea level, you can also export a list of all of the users who have voted for it. So our sales team uses this because often we're working on features that have been directly asked for in line with, like they'll say, if you build this feature, I'll buy Canny. So we will often build the feature and then we get in touch with them in a more direct way to reopen that conversation about bringing Canny on board for their teams. So that's something you can do on the idea view. You click on the users and you can export all of their email addresses. Cool. So I translated the other question. So it's a follow up on the insights question. So they said, what would be the process for linking an insight to an idea? Their use case is that several people write something similar, and I want it all combined into a single insight. So they might
I
be mixing up that we can have multiple insights on a single idea. But do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, first I would ask if you're using autopilot. And again, I would really recommend you check that out because it's going to alleviate that issue for you automatically. But I guess the process would be it would be a little bit manual. You would need to kind of copy. Right now it's manual. You need to copy the comment and then go to the idea, click on insight, and there you would paste the insight into the main idea that you would like to work from. I'm trying to see if I have a little photo, sorry. Um, where do we talk about insights?
Towards the end. I guess the idea is you actually want multiple insights
Yeah.
because it's better to see that 4 people have asked for the same thing. Like going back to the reporting idea, everybody wants revenue reporting. It's great to see 4 insights from 4 separate customers all asking for the same thing. And then it all feeds up into the idea, which is revenue reporting. So our recommendation is not to try to combine insights into one. It's try to group insights into one singular idea. Oh, we have another question. So that's Julia. Do you want to add more to that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Yeah. And to Claire's point, this is like where you would see the actual impact. So that's why it's so helpful to make sure everything's grouped under one insight. And just to close the loop, you would just go here and add a new insight. But yeah, sorry, next question.
We're just having a nice conversation. I'm assuming it's with Arturo. Yeah, it is. So you asked that said that sometimes it doesn't merge functionality properly. They do use autopilot. What
Oh,
we
okay.
might do is just follow up with you directly and understand why your comments aren't merging. There is some, functionality about not merging things that aren't true merges, but we can follow up with you directly after the webinar and make sure that it's working for you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anybody? No? Going once, going twice? Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was so great to go through ideas with you. We understand this is a new concept, and especially if you've been a long time Canny user, it can just be a bit funny to change post to ideas and things like that. But we're always here to help. We're continuously updating our help docs, and you can chat with our team via our support tool. But yeah, I think that was everything from us today. If you did want to join the call tomorrow, just email us and we can send you the link. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.